In the XIX century, they were considered as an exemplary married couple. Immediately after the wedding of Prince Albert with Queen Victoria, the fashion for love marriages returned to England, which has not happened for centuries. The sudden death of Victoria's beloved spouse forever turned her into a grieving widow who never left her black clothes. But what feelings did Albert himself experience? It is known that the prince was famous for his restraint and even coldness. Their first meeting in 1836 did not leave any imprint on the young. Victoria was not considered a beauty, and Albert, who was a prominent man, showed extreme dryness. In messages after their acquaintance, the princess, then she had not yet ascended the throne, even mockingly called Albert a delicate stomach and did not consider him as a potential groom. However, their wedding was facilitated by the Belgian king, who was the uncle of both. Due to circumstances, Victoria, as the heir to the throne, had to marry and have children, and Albert, Prince of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, needed a suitable bride. Since they were young and had similar roots, why not connect them? October 10, 1839, was the moment when Victoria first felt in love with Albert at their second meeting. The girl, who had previously shown indifference, suddenly became passionately inflamed for the young man. Interestingly, it was she who proposed to him, despite Lord Melbourne's objections. This historical fact means that it was she who asked the prince to become her husband, and he agreed. Albert probably foresaw such an outcome in advance, thus confirming the correctness of the calculations of the Belgian king. We will not go into details about the solemn ceremony on February 10, 1840. Such details as the wedding dress, jewelry, and veil are better left for another article. We will focus on the emotions of the young. It's a fascinating comparison of their feelings. Victoria literally soared on her wings in her delight, which was reflected in the pages of her letters and diaries. His great love and affection, they gave me such happiness. It's interesting, are love and affection two adjacent emotions? Albert's letters from that time look much more balanced. He shares with friends his satisfaction with his wife and lifestyle, which he considers an example of family values. Being highly educated and reasonable, the prince always tried to fulfill expectations, acting as a loyal friend and support. But the question arises, was his decisions more determined by duty than emotions, or could he not express his feelings completely? Albert, possessing intelligence and activity, initially limited himself to the decorative role of consort, but gradually he gained more influence, becoming not only Victoria's chief advisor, but also the de facto ruler of England. Due to the Queen's frequent pregnancies, it was difficult for her to rule the country. Albert was happy to take on household issues, but during the period of childbirth, with tacit restraint, he returned his powers to his wife. "I'm just a husband, not the owner of the house," Albert wrote with some bitterness. However, he turned out to be an excellent spouse and defender. When the Queen was subjected to an assassination attempt, it was Albert who saved her life with his reaction. A few months later, the Queen obtained a special decision from Parliament, guaranteeing that in the event of her death, before the heirs reach adulthood, power will be transferred to the prince. Albert showed much more talent than his wife and had a significant education. His active mind required continuous employment, however. Despite this, his abilities remained largely unused. Despite his great achievements in charity, army reforms, the organization of the World's Fair, and other areas, Albert failed to receive a full assessment from either Victoria or her ministers, who did not fully realize his value. He suffered from the inability to put his knowledge into practice, as the Queen herself said, "I sign the papers, and Albert impregnates them." Researcher E. Dugdale believed that the Queen's limited thinking and obvious intellectual inequality led to mental depression in Prince Albert. At the same time, he grinned, describing his influence on Victoria. "Uncle Leopold tells me, I whisper in Victoria's ear, and she bypasses Aberdeen." However, it remained rather a shadow policy. The words, "He is my angel," belonged to Queen Victoria herself. Prince Albert still kept himself restrained. Obviously, different upbringing and characters affected them. Even their intimate interests turned out to be different. The prince used the bedroom for the prosperity of the family, while Victoria turned out to be more sensual than expected. After the birth of the last child, when the doctor suggested stopping the procreation process, the Queen was horrified. "Do I need to give up the embrace of my beloved?" Indeed, Albert showed a different kind of love for Victoria, not as bright and passionate as the French novels of that time described him. On December 4, 1861, Prince Albert died, leaving the Queen in deep despair. For many years to come, she could not cope with this loss. There is a legend that the prince's last words were uttered in German, "My dear wife." Scientists and biographers are still arguing about how sincerely Prince Albert loved Queen Victoria.